The insidious part about inflation, it actually harms the poorest people in society. If you're wealthy, you can put your money into something that's inflation resistant, like real estate, gold, or Bitcoin. But poor people, they're just holding cash. It's a regressive tax. It steals wealth from the poorest people in society to fund government programs.
And crypto is an answer to that.
Yeah.
Brian Armstrong, the CEO and co-founder of Coinbase,
one of the world's largest crypto platforms. He's known for pushing crypto into the mainstream
and setting a clear, disciplined approach to workplace culture.
Who are you?
I'm a pretty regular guy. My personal mission beyond that is to accelerate progress in the world using science and technology. Well, the mission of Coinbase is to increase economic freedom in the world.
Tell me one thing that you learned in the last 20 years I can take with me for the next half of my life.
Action produces information. If you're unsure what to do, just do anything. Even if it's the wrong thing, it will produce information about what you should be doing, and you'll be on to the next step.
You mentioned your co-founder, Fred. He left in 2017. How did that make you feel?
It was like really tough at the time. I felt abandoned. When I had to go up there and tell everyone that Fred was leaving, and my heart was racing, my palms were sweating, and my voice actually cracked. That's the kind of experience that makes you grow as a leader.
How do you last so long as a founder without killing yourself?
Sleep, exercise, and nutrition. There's still mornings where I wake up and I have a bad attitude, and I gotta, listen to some David Goggins.
Don't be a little bitch. How do you turn being bald as a superpower?
I don't discriminate against people with hair.
Makes me feel better. Although I'm losing my hair, so it's fine. Hi everyone. This is the little bit that I know none of you like that can help us make a huge difference for this show, and we want to take it next. 71% of the people who regularly watch When Shift Happens have not subscribed. And so all I'd ask you, if you want to make a huge difference, is the following. If you've seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team, hit the subscribe button, and we'll continue to build this show for you. Thank you. You came with your security here?
Mm-hmm.
When did you start to realize that you needed security around you?
Let's see. As Coinbase started growing early on, we had maybe a couple 100,000 users early on, and we had a couple million, and we had a couple tens of million, it kept growing. And at a certain point, I realized that this is true of most consumer apps, actually. Like if, maybe 1 in 1,000 people in society have like schizophrenia or something like that, they're not well, right? So if you have enough customers of an app, some of them will be unwell, which is unfortunately true. And then, crypto really gets people's emotions going, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's their money, it's their assets. And so, I don't know, it was probably like 2015, 2017, something in that time frame. We just started to think about security, and it's important to keep everybody safe who's working at Coinbase.
Does that mean that you can't go for a brunch anymore or a dinner anymore without security? Or it's just like a certain places where you go that you need some kind of protection or help?
No, I feel comfortable going out and doing normal things. Once in a while somebody might recognize me, but it's not like to a place where it's uncomfortable. And, I think anytime I'm going to give a talk somewhere where it's in advance, like people might, that's the kind of thing that might require more attention. Or if I'm going to a foreign country with like higher risks or things like that. But yeah, overall, I feel like it hasn't really impeded my life too much.
Who are you?
Who am I? I'm a pretty regular guy. I'm an engineer, software engineer. I'm introverted kid who like to build things, and I find it fun to build things. So I kind of always couldn't help it, and just started. It gives me a lot of energy and excitement to build something in the world that lots of people come in and try to use it, hopefully benefit from it. Gives me a sense of purpose and fulfillment, try to do something useful in the world. And I love technology. I think technology is a lever to try to improve civilization, right? Even if you go back to fire and stone tools, or like the shoes on our feet or eyeglasses, these are all technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that science and technology is really like the root of all civilizational progress, right? Because if you have good science and technology, you can create novel products that help people. You can grow your economy. That gives you more resources to do education, healthcare. It gives you a stronger military. Like it's the root of all, power, prosperity, right? Everything from like having antibiotics or electric cars or, a more open and free financial system, which is what I think crypto is creating. To me, that's an important foundation on which all progress needs to be built. So, I think at some point, it doesn't really matter how much money you have. I just want to keep building things and try to be useful.
Mm. You mentioned the introverted kid.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So as a kid, I was kind of shy. I was not very confident around people and talking to them about my ideas. And I was more like reading lots of books. Once we got a computer in the home, I was like learning computers, whether it was like video games or command line or early programming, building websites. I found it easier to interface with computers than human beings as a kid, right? I was probably a little bit on the autism spectrum. So there's lots of ways, different factors that come into that. But I realized at a certain point that I needed to become more comfortable actually like going and engaging with people. And so I pushed myself out of my comfort zone to go do that at times. And actually, like when I was in grad school in college, I got a job as a bartender because I knew it would force me to talk to lots of people all the time. It sounds kind of silly, right? But like that was actually something I needed to force myself to go do. And at this point, I would say I'm a tech entrepreneur. I want to, just keep building things in the world and try to use my skills for good.
I had a conversation on this podcast with Kiao Wang from Alliance DAO, I think last year, and I asked him, how do you find the best founders early? And he told me, and some people were really pissed off about this question because I asked it to a bunch of other founders afterwards. One of them was Jeff from Hyperliquid. He said basically, they have ideally, if you want to find the best founder, they have a high degree of autism but the best is sort of childhood trauma that gave them a chip on the shoulder. And if you put these two things together, you get the best founders. How much can you you mentioned maybe not high degree of autism, but you said I had some autism. How much can you relate with the other part, which is what gave you a chip on the shoulder?
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I kind of agree with that. I think there's a lot of truth in what he's saying. By the way, there's also I think other founders actually have ADHD. So not to like, these are like oversimplifications, right? But it's like either somewhere the autists or the ADHD, like either one can work, and then maybe a chip on the shoulder too. Or
can you just define the ADHD part, because it's kind of so overused today?
Yeah,
that a lot of people, everyone says I have ADHD, right? It's probably not the case, but actually, when I look at founders, kind of even myself, I'm like, I can't fucking sit straight, and I'm trying 2 million things at the same time. And how do you define this ADHD part?
Yeah, so there are certain founders, like I'm thinking of two in my head right now. I don't know if they'd want me to say their ADHD, so I won't say their names, but yeah, they're basically like they can't sit still for one thing, but they're jumping around. They have a ton of energy. They're highly extroverted. They're like, okay, what about this? And what about this? Let me I have this idea. Let me go fix this. And you need to sometimes pair those people with a really strong operator who can just like make the trains run on time and like not blow the whole place up with like a million ideas, but that their source of energy and creativity is very powerful, right? So anyway, you often need to pair one of these founders, whether they have autism or ADHD or whatever, with a strong operator, which I have with Emily Choi. Anyway, that's my quick definition on the ADHD side. You asked about trauma, I guess, and chip on the shoulder. I do think there's some element of truth to that, right? Like a lot of founders who I know, they have something that's driving them early on, which could be like some fear, some anger, revenge, right? Like Palmer Luckey kind of famously said, I think something like, there's only two things which motivate me, like patriotism and revenge. So I think that there's some element of that. And for me, that was like a fear of not being recognized, not feeling worthy, like not having accomplished something in my life. Like, so I had a fear about that. And then
coming from where?
It's hard for me to say, right? It's something probably in my childhood about being shy, introverted. Like it might have been, if a therapist was here to put me on the couch, they might be saying something about my parents or like, desiring recognition. I don't know. But the thing that I see in a lot of founders who I've known over the years is that if they don't allow themselves to transition from that early motivation that might be more of a negative thing, they actually burn out, and they, once the company starts to have a little success, they actually they lose their source of motivation. And so I think you need to, and that kind of, I'd say, happened for me a little bit as Coinbase became like a unicorn and these kind of things. I had to actually transition my source of motivation to being something more positive that I was running toward, not something I was running away from, right? Like in my case, it'd be something that brings you like your joy, or it's like your passion. And for me, that's like, it's learning new things, it's building things, that personal growth, I guess, would be on the learning side. And having an impact, it gives me like a sense of fulfillment, right? When I wake up in the world, and I try to, I always try to think about how can I be having a bigger impact and advance civilization or accelerate progress. So, not every morning do I wake up feeling like super motivated. I have to go find that and create that mindset. But that's what's allowed me to, I'll give you an example. If I was just, for some reason, I had to live in a cabin in the woods by myself and I couldn't talk to anybody for like a year, what would I do with my time all day? I would probably try to build things, and even if it was like out of wood and lumber, or I would read books and try to learn things. I'd build stuff and I would learn things. Like that's just what my brain likes to do. And that's, so building a company gives me a chance to do that. And I get to put myself in it, out of my comfort zone, and engage with interesting people. And, it's like kind of like playing the game of life.
Yeah, it's a game.
Yeah, it is a game in some ways.
Quick one. I want to thank our partners who help us make this show possible. I'd like to thank our friends at Jupiter, the most used decentralized trading platform on Solana and the largest DAO in the world. Thank you to our friends at Paradex. It's official Perps Dex season, and we've teamed up with Paradex, the leading perpetuals decentralized exchange with zero fees, deep liquidity, and privacy. Their season 2 runs through the end of January, so you do not want to miss that one. In addition, their flagship NFT collection drops in Q4 this year, and we're giving you a chance to get one. Supply is limited, so hurry up and use the link below to get on the waiting list. And last but not least, thank you to the awesome team at CastCard, my go-to card to spend my stablecoins directly with my Apple Pay to buy anything: food, coffee, hotel night, or plane tickets without having to use a bank ever again.
How much of your mission today is, do you think, driven by something that you might have or might not have had in your childhood or in your past?
The mission today? Well, the mission of Coinbase is to increase economic freedom in the world. And then I'd say like my personal mission beyond that is like to accelerate progress in the world, civilizational progress using science and technology. So in all the projects I'm involved in, even some outside of Coinbase as an investor, for instance, I think fit with that. Now, if you look at my childhood, it's not like I'm not like a refugee fleeing a country where all of our wealth was stolen, which has happened to a lot of people, right? I did have some some experiences growing up. For instance, I lived in Buenos Aires, Argentina for a year. I kind of got to see a society that had gone through hyperinflation. So anyway, I guess to answer your question, it's not clear to me that connecting it to some event in my childhood is like a clear through line on that for me. But I will say there's something about my psychology is just, I always love, optimizing things, looking for efficiencies, building things, learning things. Like I was very obsessed as a kid with these video games like Civilization, right? Or StarCraft 2, where you collect resources and you build infrastructure and then you advance to the next thing. And even the game like Polytopia is kind of a simplified version of Civilization. Like these games actually hook into something very deep in my brain that's like very almost like addictive. And at some point I had to go cold turkey on these games because it was like, it's too addictive for my brain. But creating companies and building companies and products kind of scratches the same itch for me.
Absolutely. There was a couple of years ago, I think now it's kind of less of a problem, but there was all these parents who were kind of worried about their kids too addicted to games, which makes sense on one side. But if you study good entrepreneurs, they actually produce gamers. And it's because it's all about managing resources and building things.
Yeah, I think you're right. Some people's brains are just very addicted or wired to like find pleasure in that. And a game can be even more rewarding because it's like, oh, in 20 minutes, you can feel a sense of progress. And, it was just difficult enough, but you managed to get through it. in companies, sometimes it's like multi-year efforts, but to me, it's even more fun it's more fulfilling to play the game of business, because when you win, it has a real impact on the world and real people. It's sometimes I feel unfulfilled if I spent like the whole night playing a game or something, and the sun is coming up the next day, and I'm like, well, what did I really accomplish? It was addictive, but did I accomplish anything for humanity? No. So yeah, I try to channel it into more productive areas.
Some time ago, the word bald was trending on X. So much so that you tweeted about it. Finally trending. There was a lot of likes and engagement. So I had to talk about that, obviously. Brian, being bald is a meme in crypto, but it's also very relevant and serious topic for a lot of men, especially guys in their 20s, early 20s, maybe more insecure, especially founders who work very hard and are very stressed. People in crypto were stressed all the time because we're in a 24/7 crazy industry. What's the Brian Baldness story?
Well, I mean, yeah, it is stressful to go through, right? I think I was in my late 20s and noticed my hair thinning, and you kind of have these decision points in life where you have to just go for it and like shave it off, and it's uncomfortable. And I remember somebody asked me like, "Oh, do you have cancer?" or something like that. It was like weird. It was weird for a few weeks or a few months, but honestly, after that, I stopped thinking about it as much. And I think just everybody can probably kind of relate to something like this that they're insecure about, right? Like people might feel, oh, like they're a little overweight, or they have their accent, or they don't have enough money, or like everyone's their nose or whatever. Like everyone has something they're insecure about, and so I think it's just like anything. Just you kind of have to just own it and be able to laugh at yourself a little bit. And everyone else is so focused on themselves and their own insecurities that nobody really cares about your thing.
They don't care.
They don't care. You're the only one who cares.
But everyone is insecure. I think like that's kind of like the main point. No matter how successful you are or how big you are, everyone has their own insecurity. I actually had this conversation with Mike Novogratz about baldness because you said at some point, I just shave it off, and it takes a couple of weeks, and then you just go with it.
Yeah.
How do you turn being bald as a superpower and even become, because there's this meme in crypto that the best founders are bald.
Well, I mean, I do think it'd be funny to create an index fund of bald CEOs. But, people have other jokes about this, like CEOs who deadlift and, founder CEOs. Actually, founder CEOs do outperform the S&P 500, like professional CEOs. So that one, I believe there's something to that, especially if you pair a great founder CEO with a great operator. Like I was saying, you can create a lot of value there, because the founder might, left to their own devices, they'll have lots of new ideas, but they might, blow the place up. Like a pure operator all the trains will run on time, but they might not do anything innovative again. So it's the pairing of that I think creates a lot of value. Anyway, I think it's kind of fun to, like, the memes and the jokes about the bald founder thing is totally funny, but I don't think there's any like real signal in it, I guess, just to say that explicitly. Like, I don't discriminate against people with hair.
Makes me feel better. Although I'm losing my hair, so it's fine. Actually, regarding the founder CEO, I mean, it's a big topic. Do you think it's possible for a company to perform really amazingly well for the long run without a founder CEO?
Well, it's kind of like a civilization or a country, like the Romans or the Egyptians or something. Like, succession planning is a really hard topic, right? Like, clearly, when the magic is working, like, it can create extraordinary value, right? Like Steve Jobs at Apple, or there's plenty of examples. There's also lots of founders who have gotten fired, probably for good reason, right? And, so how do you do succession planning? Like, how do you bring in the next generation? And it's just like anything. It's really difficult. I mean, if you find the right person, they can extend that story or have another founding moment, right? They can actually like have a new founding moment. But I think there's a dynamic that happens on boards, and I'm still the CEO of Coinbase, so we haven't had to like really live through this, but just I've looked at other companies a little bit, right? And imagine you're on the board of a company like Apple, and Steve Jobs passes away, and so boards are effectively committees, right? They're a group of people who all have to vote together. So sometimes you get a little more risk aversion on a committee than you would from like a high, they're not going to choose a high beta person. There might be somebody who they're a little bit of a wild card, right? Like they have some kind of crazy ideas. The public market may not love them. Maybe your accounting firm they're not the kind of person who would just create surety and safety, but they occasionally could have really brilliant ideas that would be the next generation, the next act. And so boards have a tough job about like, are we trying to make sure we don't mess this thing up and basically preserve it? Or are we trying to make a high beta outcome? And so basically most boards round to safety. If they had to, default, they'll round to safety. And that's why I think you get more safe picks in a succession planning environment. And look, it can still work. I mean, Apple grew enormously under Tim Cook's leadership, for instance. And I think the job of a great operator CEO as opposed to founder CEO is like, how do you create founder DNA within the company to complement you, right? Same. The inverse of my job as a founder CEO is how do I find the right DNA to complement me operationally or in the other risk functions. And so you can bring founder DNA into a company after the founder has left by acquiring other founders or, more of a homegrown approach. So that's a hard thing to get right, and succession planning doesn't always work.
You mentioned before the autistic or ADHD founders complemented by very good operators.
Yeah.
Which means co-founders.
Yeah.
Often. You're an investor too. What do you think about solo founders?
Well, I think it can work. Solo founders can work. So you need the complement. The complement can come from your co-founders, or it can come from building out a leadership team or an executive team. And the key either way, whether it's a co-founder or an executive team, I think it's finding people that you have mutual respect with, people who challenge you and they're right, at least some of the time. I guess if I were to put it even more extreme, I'd say look for people who you're a little bit intimidated by, right? Like people who you're a little afraid of saying something dumb around them because they're really good at what they do. And they're fast and they're smart and they're coming up with novel ideas, and makes you want to be better and to try to keep up and to get your act together if you're going to go talk to them about something. That's the mark. It's kind of like maybe in a marriage, the same thing, right? That's the mark of like a true peer, as opposed to someone who you can control, or you just that's by the way, that's the hard part, is like they're going to disagree with you on stuff and they're going to push you on stuff, and that can make you better when the dynamic really works.
Where's the fine line or the limit, both in marriage or partner or co-founder, on what's acceptable as challenge or not?
Yeah, well, ideally, it should always be about the work and like trying to create a better outcome for the company, not like some personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be in a trusted envelope of respect, right? So oftentimes, like Fred Ursum, is an amazing co-founder, operator. Like Coinbase wouldn't be what it is today without him helping get that company off the ground with me in the first 5 years. And I'll give you just a simple tactic that he and I would often use. So we're meeting up every day, like making decisions. I'd say like 95% of the time, we both agree on what to do. Okay. But 5% of the time, I'm thinking, I think we should go this way. He's thinking we should go that way. And we would discuss it a bit. And so at a certain point, you got to make a decision and go, right? Now, it would be a bad move for me to say every time, well, I'm the CEO, so I'm making the final call, right? That's a good recipe to just piss off other people who are working with you. So instead, what we came up with was a very simple tactic, but we'd say, all right, 1 to 5, how much do you care? On the count of 3, let's do it. So we'd say, almost like rock, paper, scissors. We'd say on 3, 1, 2, 3. We're gonna hit, I'm a 3, you're a 4. All right, let's go your way on this. And you just care about it more, right? Now, sometimes people ask, what if you're both a 5? A 5 out of 5, right? And actually, in practice, I don't think it ever happened once that we were both a 5 out of 5. I mean, the nice thing about that tactic, by the way, is that it takes a little bit of, because you're debating something and like, I think this and I think that, and you can't tell, like, is this person, are they like dead set against it, or are they just enjoying the conversation because they're a passionate person? So sometimes somebody will be like really passionately arguing for something, like that would be insane to do that. And then you're like, all right, on 3, and you're like, there are 2 out of 5. You're like, wow, okay, you only care a 2 out of 5. They just love to engage in debate, right? And so anyway, we never had it where we were both a 5, but I think if we were, we would have just flipped a coin. And then oftentimes, I would say to him, or he would say to me, all right, you care more, let's go your way. But if it breaks, it's on you to fix it, and that would be a little bit, they're taking responsibility for the outcome of it too.
You mentioned your co-founder, Fred.
Yeah.
You started Coinbase in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
He left in 2017 after 5 years.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel?
I mean, honestly, it was like really tough at the time. I probably felt abandoned, I also had a lot of fear because I felt like, are people going to think the company's failing? Are they going to think I'm failing? Are other employees going to leave? So those were some of the fears in the back of my mind. But I guess just actually zooming out a minute, I think the way Fred handled it was actually very good. And it's part of the reason we're still like best friends to this very day, which is not common, by the way, amongst co-founders who've started companies and somebody leaves. He handled it in a very, very good way. So a couple things that he did. One was, we had a exec coach that we were working with at that time, and he very astutely brought it, I think probably like a year before he left, he brought it up and he said, look, here's some of the things that I would love to do in the role, and maybe I want to do long-term. I'd love to see if we can adjust it. We tried a few things along the way. And he's very talented. Like he could have been CEO of Coinbase, right? I think he's an incredible natural leader. He's super smart. He has a technical background, everything. So in some ways we had like an abundance of riches or something. Like we had 2 people who could have done the job. And I think he had a craving to sort of like run his own thing at some point, right? So anyway, we were having all these conversations. So as it got closer to maybe I do want to do my own thing at some point, it became more of a conversation about, okay, how and when and how might it happen in a way that leaves the company in a good place. So to his credit, he kind of waited until Coinbase and the crypto markets were on a big upswing. And he's like, okay, the company is just crushing it right now. Me departing is not going to like harm the company in any way. And then he actually helped the company have a new founding moment, I would say, where it went from really Fred and I like running the company together, making most of the decisions, to, okay, it's Brian as CEO, but let's build a real leadership team or executive team around him. And that kind of helped the company, I'd say, professionalize and have a new founding moment. And some early incarnations of that, some of it worked, some of it didn't. It's hard to build an executive team and get it to all gel together. But the foundations of it got in place, which helped Coinbase become a public company. So I thought he handled that very well.
You mentioned
I should say one more thing too, which when the hardest part was when Fred and I had to get in front of the company and make the actual announcement. And I tell this story sometimes where normally speaking in front of the company, I wasn't getting that nervous. But when I had to go up there and tell everyone that Fred was leaving, I don't know if you ever had this moment like where you're sort of doing a public speaking thing, or even in front of like 10 people or something. And my heart was racing, my palms were sweating. Actually, sometimes you get like a shot of adrenaline and your logical brain is kind of like, oh my gosh, like calm down, like try to just act normal. But your body is just like getting nervous. I could feel myself getting nervous as I was going to go up there on stage. And I was like, why is my leg shaking? Like I'm messing this up. I need to appear confident in front of the company. And I remember telling the company that Fred was leaving, and my voice actually cracked. Like I sounded like going through puberty, like a 15-year-old or something. And I was like, oh, this is so embarrassing. And we got through it, and everyone's just processing the news, and they were like, everyone was fine. Basically, everyone was fine. Like maybe a day later, we were all just back to work. But that's the kind of experience that makes you grow as a leader, is like, go do the scary things, go do the hard things. And then I think if I had to do it again, it still wouldn't be pleasant, but I wouldn't be as nervous.
Do you have another moment like that to share? That's like the absolute most tough moment in the history of Coinbase.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. So that's the thing about starting a company, is like, there's that expression, like it's like chewing glass and staring into the abyss. You kind of have to do hard things all the time that are outside your comfort zone. And look, there's a kind of, I don't know, like masochistic maybe version of myself that's like, I like doing things that are hard because it makes me better over time, and that's how you grow. But yeah, like every week there's something like that that's difficult, right? Like I have to have a hard conversation with somebody about letting them go, or that they need to step up on this, or that we actually can't, go buy this company and here's why, and like we're shattering their dreams or whatever. Or, it's getting sued by the federal government and congressional testimony, having like a terrible article come out about you in mainstream media that millions of people read, like having a cybersecurity event where like, you lost $100 million and you have to pay this back, and then go publicly and own it and like, introspect about what we did wrong. Like there's a number of hard things that happen in running a company. And like the Mission First blog post I put out, about being an apolitical company, and that upset people all over the world. If you've never had like 1 million people upset with you at the same time, that's a rare thing. Most people go through their whole life and you might have 1 or 2 people mad at you, but like to have 1 million people mad at you at the same time, that's a new experience. Builds character.
How do you accept the co-founder's departure without feeling that you are here working for his bags or his shares while he's gone tackle the next big exciting thing, which probably for most founder, for probably every founder, the most exciting thing is this first part. But then you're like, my co-founder is leaving, I'm at the helm, I can't leave.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working for his bags while he's the one going to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's very true. So actually, vesting of shares is an important thing, right? And actually, I think the standard vesting people do in Silicon Valley is typically over 4 years, but that's for employees. And actually, I think Fred would agree with this too. So we've subsequently invested in other companies and stuff. I think for founders, you should actually do like 10-year vesting. Mm-hmm. It's very rare. Any project worth doing is going to be barely getting started after 4 years. Like it takes a long time to get these ambitious companies off the ground. So I think for founders, you should do longer vesting periods. And then if you're a founder who has vested their full shares, I think it's totally reasonable to go to the board at some point and say, I want a new grant. And as you get to be a bigger company, there's like compensation committees and all kinds of diligence and governance you can do around this. But there's even like lawyers out there who will represent you as a founder to negotiate with the board if you want to do these kind of things. So, I think it's just like anybody, you need to feel like it's a hard job. So you need to feel like you are participating in the upside. And some founders actually, even if they've fully vested, they feel like, all right, I still own whatever it is, 10% of the company, but like if the company doubles or triples, I have major upside. And so it's a personal choice for everyone, I would say.
Quick one. I want to thank our partners who help us make this show possible. Thank you, Trezor, my favorite cold wallet to store my crypto and make sure I sleep well at night. If you want to order a Trezor wallet and sleep well at night too, you can use my promo code WSH10 to get a 10% discount. Big thank you to Bitwise Asset Management for backing today's conversation. Bitwise is a crypto specialist asset manager with more than $15 billion in client assets across 30 plus crypto solutions, including ETFs, index funds, alpha strategies, staking, and more. However you like to invest in crypto, Bitwise has something for you. Thank you to our friends at Sui for supporting this show. Sui is a scalable layer 1 blockchain that's fast, secure, and affordable, built by previous Facebook developers, and that delivers the benefits of Web3 with the ease of Web2. Thank you to Story Protocol, the IP layer of the internet, for supporting today's conversation. Story is building an open system for creators to register, manage, and grow their IP on-chain. Whether you're building words, stories, or characters, Story Protocol gives you the tools to protect and expand your creative universe. To support this show, please check the sponsor links in the description down below.
How did you get so fascinated by the world of Bitcoin and the blockchain?
Well, I think there's a few things if I look back in my life that primed me to be really excited about it when I first read the Bitcoin white paper in December 2010. So one of those was that I studied computer science and economics. So that's the perfect kind of intersection of crypto. I was also reading a lot of books about free market economics, right? Like, Milton Friedman, and I was reading like Ayn Rand books, like Atlas Shrugged, and There's a great TV series that Milton Friedman actually created, I think in the 80s, called Free to Choose. You can watch it on YouTube, but there's kind of these like libertarian ideas like around how do you have sound money? How do you have basic property rights for everyone? How can free market economics and capitalism actually produce the greatest prosperity, including for everyone in society, including the poorest people in society? So I was very much a believer in this idea. I had also spent a year living in Buenos Aires, Argentina, like I mentioned. So I had seen a country go through hyperinflation. Most people who have only lived in the developed world or like the United States don't really have a deep appreciation of that. And then I also was an early employee at Airbnb. So I had seen how they were trying to move money to 190 countries or 180 countries around the world. And it's just a very broken, slow system. There's delays, there's high fees. It only works in certain countries. So I kind of had this fundamental view that, the global financial system is not very efficient. Number two, most people in the world actually don't have access to good financial services, whether that's currency where the value can't be inflated away, or like the ability to get a loan, or even basic property rights in many cases where people's wealth has been confiscated. And so when I read the Bitcoin white paper, I kind of couldn't stop thinking about it because it captured my attention really in a deep way. Like this was kind of like the internet, global decentralized network, but instead of removing information around, this was removing value. And so anybody with a smartphone could in theory have economic freedom, right? Like sound money where the wealth couldn't be, and then like property rights, maybe engaging in a more global economy. So like the idea just very much resonated with me kind of on the freedom front. And then the thoughts that went through my head were more like, okay, well, is it actually going to work? Is there going to be some flaw found in the cryptography? Is the government going to come try to shut it down? And as I slowly reasoned through it, started to work on some prototypes, that's what led me. I went to some early Bitcoin meetups in San Francisco. This is what led me to start tinkering with a prototype on nights and weekends, which eventually became Coinbase. And I applied to Y Combinator and all these things. So I had to develop my confidence around it a little bit of like, okay, I think maybe I could do something here.
How long did you need to build this confidence to say I'm going all in now? That early?
Yeah. I'd say it took me, I read the Bitcoin white paper December 2010, and I think Coinbase incorporated in like July of 2012. So it took, what is that, like a year and a half-ish or something. So it took me a while to build the confidence. I had a lot of self-doubt about it at the time because I talked to some of my smart friends about Bitcoin, and they're like, I don't really get it. Why would somebody trust this? And the thing that really convinced me to really try it was I'd read a lot of the Y Combinator essays that Paul Graham had written on the internet. And when I got accepted to Y Combinator, the first time I applied, I didn't get in. The second time I got in, and they gave me a $150K check to like say, all right, go quit your job and work on this. And that gave me the confidence to say, all right, I'm going to quit my job and really try this for at least a few years and see if I can get it to work.
The first time you applied at Y Combinator, you didn't get in for the Coinbase idea, or was it something else?
Well, I guess actually the full story is the first time I applied was with a tutoring company that I had started, which was a prior company, which ended up being like a base hit. It wasn't very successful. Then I initially applied with the Coinbase idea, and I didn't have a co-founder or anything like that. And I think they invited me to interview, but I deferred for another 6 months because I didn't have a co-founder or anything. And then I reapplied 6 months later, and then they said, come and interview. And that's when I went in. So yeah.
Creating more economic freedom in the world. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So economic freedom is this really interesting concept that economists look at. But I guess from just like a visceral level, what it means to me is around self-sovereignty. Like it's your money. You should be able to do whatever you want with it. And the way economists would define it is they'd say, okay, can the value of money in this economy, in this country be eroded by inflation, or is there sound money? Can people engage in free trade? Can they start a company? Do they have access to financial services? Do they have basic property rights, or can their wealth be taken away from them? And this might all kind of sound like, I don't know, high level philosophical principles, but just like at a gut level, if you exist in a society where you spend a lot of time, you work hard, you try to do something good, and all of the upside can be taken away from you at a moment's notice, which unfortunately happens in many parts of the world, what's the result of that? You're just not going to try that hard, right? You're just going to kind of keep your head down, try not to upset any of the powers that be. And it's actually a necessary condition for progress in society, to have a high trust society with rule of law, property rights, that everyone has economic freedom. And now the beauty of crypto is that anybody with a smartphone, which is increasingly everyone in the world, can have economic freedom, right? If you can just have especially self-custodial wallets, that's why they're so powerful, right? If you can remember a 12-word phrase, or now it's more even like biometrics driven, you can store your own wealth in a way that nobody can steal it from you, and it's portable. You can move to another country without your wealth being seized. You can participate in a global economy. And that's not even to mention all the downstream things like just payments being faster and cheaper and prediction markets and all that, which we can get into. But economic freedom is a necessary condition for civilizational progress. And we can actually bend the curve of economic freedom globally with crypto technology and mobile apps.
You mentioned people working so hard and all their life, and everything can be taken away so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that we're here in the US, but in developed countries, people work very hard. Things are not necessarily taken that quickly, but it's taken slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And crypto is an answer to that.
Yeah. It can happen slowly too. You're right. The insidious part about inflation, for instance, is that it actually harms the poorest people in society. People don't realize that. I mean, maybe you understand this well, but just to say it, if you're wealthy and you live in Turkey or Nigeria or Argentina, you can put your money into something that's inflation resistant, right? Like real estate or gold or Bitcoin. Maybe you can even have a US brokerage account to buy S&P 500 or something. But poor people can't get access to those things. They can't buy real estate. They're just holding cash. And so it's a regressive tax. Normally we have like a progressive tax system where wealthy people pay more. This is the opposite of that. It's a regressive tax system. It steals wealth from the poorest people in society to fund government programs that, typically are not really voted on in a democracy. It's like someone has their finger on the dials that they can just print more of their own money. It steals wealth from the poorest people in society, and then you get all this kind of bad behavior in governments. So it's a really, really insidious thing. And actually, democracies around the world are struggling to figure out how to avoid deficit spending and inflation. Like the incentives are not aligned in many of these places to have a balanced budget, right? Which I think is a fascinating topic. And one of the big things crypto and Bitcoin especially is doing is it's shifting the power from governments to individual people. And it's a check and balance on deficit spending, because if these fiat currencies continue to inflate, people are just going to flee to Bitcoin in times of uncertainty. And that is a great thing for like individual rights and democratization of financial services.
Absolutely. It's a competition on the monopoly of money that governments and central banks have that create a big problem. Not only rich people get richer because they have the assets, but so you have asset price inflation, which is completely fucked up because the poor people cannot buy the asset and will never be able to. But also you have the actual inflation. If you just look at the COVID money printing in the US and you come 4 or 5 years later and look at the prices of things, just coffee, food, basically people who don't have assets just get double screwed.
Yeah, you're right. Inflation is a funny word because people mean different things when they say it. On the one hand, it just means the prices of things going up. On the other hand, it means literally increasing the money supply, like just printing more money out of nothing, which also makes prices go up. But prices can go up for other reasons too, like supply and demand or foreign trade issues or whatever. But yeah, I think of it when I hear inflation, I think the primary cause of inflation is just people printing more money, right? Like the government printing more money. Like there are other things that can affect prices, but if you just stop printing more money, a lot of those other effects are just smaller, in my view.
You're the definition of a true crypto OG. There are a few big OGs from the Bitcoin world and the Silicon Valley that have been very vocal more recently about privacy. What's the role of privacy and of projects like Zcash, for example, in creating more economic freedom in the world?
Yeah, well, I think privacy is incredibly important, like especially in our financial lives. That's some of the most sensitive data, right? Right up there with maybe, I don't know, your health information or something like that. It's actually kind of amazing and surprising to me that crypto has gotten as big as it has, where it's, it's, people say it's pseudonymous, right? It's like all the transactions, including the amount and the timestamp and everything, is happening on a public ledger. Now your name is not attached to it, but the addresses are all public. So like if, you go do KYC somewhere or someone de-anonymizes one of those things, they can often de-anonymize the next transactions down the chain, right? So in a way, it's actually kind of surprising how much growth crypto has gotten, even with that sort of default open nature. Now, some of the projects that came out early, like Zcash or Monero or something that were very privacy focused, like Monero in particular, I think it because it was like 100% private, the early adopters were people who were doing, nefarious things. So it created this kind of perception issue about like, well, isn't this just majority bad actors, right? Or illicit activity. Now, I don't know if that's true or not in those cases, but, sometimes perception is reality, right? From like legislators or law enforcement or whatever. And so my view on this is that privacy is very important. We need to get it in crypto. And the way I think it's going to happen is you're going to start with these chains that are default open, like Ethereum or like, some of the layer 2s like Base or, Solana and all these. And there's going to be an optional transaction type that is private. That way, you can say, hey, look, 99% of the chain is legitimate activity. There's now legitimate people also using private transactions. And it might cost a little bit more gas fees, but it's actually very similar to when the internet started. It was all HTTP, and then it moved to HTTPS, right? And I don't know if you remember, like back in the early days of the internet, people would say, oh, HTTPS is slower, like the protocol is slower. But eventually people just moved, almost the entire internet runs on HTTPS now. It got faster over time. The computers got faster, the cryptography got faster, whatever. Browsers got better. And so I think that's what's going to happen. We actually acquired this company called Ironfish to go work on private transactions for Base earlier this year in 2025. And so that team is really talented. They've been making good progress. And yeah, our goal is essentially to get like a private transaction type in Base where anybody can pay. It's probably going to be a slightly higher gas fee, but then it's a private transaction. And we'll see where more and more of that activity happens.
You're the co-founder and CEO of Coinbase. What is Coinbase, if you had to explain it to my mom? I have to say my mom because often they tell me, the guests are like, yeah, my mom is an engineer. So she can understand.
Yeah.
My mom is not an engineer. She's retired now. She was an HR manager in a Swiss cosmetic brand.
Yeah.
She's not technical.
Yeah. Well, I think what I would say to anybody getting into crypto for the first time, I'd say Coinbase is the easiest way to buy, store, and use crypto, right? Now, underneath, there's a lot of details behind that, right? We're a custodian, we're an exchange, we increasingly do payments, we can help you get a loan, we can help you use a credit card and suspend crypto. I think people over time are increasingly thinking about, can I use Coinbase as a replacement for my bank? It's just better financial services. And even people who, they don't even necessarily care too much about crypto, the technology, they're just trying to send money to their family somewhere in the world without crazy high fees, right? Or get a loan to start a business or raise money for something, right? So I think increasingly there's going to be people who just in the same way that like you and I, maybe we're not like electrical engineers who understand everything about electrons and like electricity, but we can use a light switch, right? Or a lot of people don't understand how the internet protocols work, like HTTP, but they can share a photo with their friend on WhatsApp, right? So that's how we have gotten, that's what we need to do and what we are doing to make crypto more usable over time is just, it's the best way to get access to financial services. It doesn't matter to most people. If we're going to have like 1 billion or more people using crypto, most of them won't understand or care about the technology for technology's sake. They just want better financial services.
You started Coinbase in 2012 when Bitcoin was worth $6. 13 years later, Coinbase is worth $100 billion. It's listed on the NASDAQ. You did it the hard way. There's other examples in the industry that took some shortcuts that were also very successful. What does it take to build the biggest exchange in the world by following the compliance route and taking no shortcuts?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a longer term endeavor. Going and talking to regulators in any sort of new field, it takes a lot of work, right? Usually regulators and legislators, they don't move very quickly, right? But they do eventually act. So, in entrepreneurship, it's always tricky. You need to get started with something to get a product out there, get feedback from the market. But you also need to demonstrate good faith effort, that you're trying to follow the rules, even if the rules are not entirely clear. So we'd often would ask ourselves this question of like, okay, the law is unclear on this point, but what can we do to show good faith effort to, even if it's not required, to do something that we think might be required in the future, or at least a reasonable person would look at it and say, in the absence of clarity, they did something reasonable. So that's the kind of, even just simple things like being based in the US, not trying to go to some haven offshore, or like I'd put on a suit and like go talk to these people early on. And sometimes they had no idea what we were doing. And they would ask me questions like, isn't this all just some video game? Or some banks we were trying to get banks early on, and someone would say, well, we do not work with crypto companies. Like we would never work with a crypto company. So some people, they're just stuck in, their mind is not open to these ideas. And so you have to kind of meet them where they are. Do your best to create a sense of legitimacy. And what I often found was like, if people had just looked at us on the internet and they didn't know who we were, they were highly skeptical. This early on, I'm talking like 2013, 14, 15. But once they met us in person, they suddenly trusted us more, right? And I think they could get a sense of, hopefully me and other people, Fred and other people on the team, that like, okay, these guys they're earnest and they're young and they're a little naive or something, but they're not bad people. Like they're trying to do something good in the world. And so I found that there's no substitute for that face-to-face interaction of like, just get in the room, try to be legitimate, try to be helpful, be on time, have good manners, wear a suit when it's called for. And then, eventually we had to really build a policy muscle as the company got bigger, because we encountered other forces in government that were actually anti-crypto. We can talk about that too. But
I wanted to ask, because you said one of the big assumptions there was we're doing things that the law is not clear. We're doing things that we think a reasonable person on the other side will think, oh, these guys are not bad, or they thought about this, they've been thoughtful. But this makes the assumption that the other people are reasonable.
Yeah. It turned out not all of them were reasonable. Yeah. So it's funny, there's some quote about that where first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, and then they think it's a threat, and then they accept you. And so we as crypto went through these cycles of ups and downs, initially they were kind of laughing at us or just ignoring us entirely. They're like, oh, this is some toy, like we don't have to pay attention. Suddenly it flipped in a few of their minds, where it went from this is a toy, we can ignore it, to this is a threat to the entire financial system and our way of life. For some people, it really got under their skin. And, two of those people that we realized over the this was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, were, Elizabeth Warren, who she's a senator in the United States, who in my view believes that the government should run all financial services. And she had a lot of influence in regulating banks and trying to pressure them through extrajudicial means, I would add, to debank certain industries that she didn't agree with politically. Even though she couldn't get those rules passed through Congress in a democracy, she found a backdoor to kind of pressure them by having appointed certain regulators. And she viewed crypto as a threat to that. This is my own view, at least, of her motive. And so she helped appoint an SEC chair, Gary Gensler, and from what I was told, kind of encouraged him, hey, be very aggressive and try to kill this crypto thing. And maybe I'll consider you for Treasury Secretary in the next term. That was what I was told, at least. So we suddenly started getting very bizarre behavior from the SEC, which is a federal agency in the US, where we would kind of go meet with them and put on our suit. And we met with them maybe like 30 times. And we would ask them hey, we'd love clarity about the rules, because here our lawyers are looking at it and we don't think it's clear the way the law is currently written. You're the regulator. Can you just put out some clear rules and we'd be happy to follow it? Maybe everybody follows level playing field. It's great. And we'd get these very strange responses back, like, well, we're not going to tell you that. Talk to your lawyer. And I realized at some point in these meetings that, his enforcement team was just taking notes of everything we were saying, and we'd go in and meet with them. And then we got essentially an enforcement letter like the next couple of days indicating that they wanted to sue us. And so there was no good faith effort to actually just publish the rules. I realized that they just viewed this whole industry as something they wanted to get rid of unlawfully. And I realized at a certain point that if we don't push back on this, the whole industry, at least in the US, could just be neutered or killed, right? And we weren't doing anything wrong. I felt a responsibility to defend our customers' rights. Like there's something like 50 million Americans had used crypto at this time, roughly. And they politically, it was something the American people wanted, but this small group of activists within the government were trying to unlawfully kill it. And I realized that we as an industry had to accumulate political power. We had to get organized. We had to get some of those 50 million people to actually raise their hand and say, we want to elect pro-crypto candidates and we want to vote out of office anti-crypto candidates. And so that's what Coinbase really tried to help do. I mean, we funded this 501c3 called standwithcrypto.org. We got about 2 million people to raise their hand and say they want to elect pro-crypto candidates. We put up scorecards for every member of Congress going into the election of like A through F. What was we looked at all their public comments, all their voting record on crypto. And what we did was we made it a political reality that it was politically risky now to be anti-crypto because that's what the American people wanted, which is democracy working, by the way. We also donated money to Fairshake, which is a super PAC. And, there's various things that we did, put out a whole bunch of policy papers. We actually sued the SEC as well because they violated certain parts of the Administrative Procedures Act. I can get into that if you want. But long story short, I feel very proud of that. And actually, when I go talk to our customers, this is the biggest thing they thank me for. They say, thank you for standing up to these people and defending our rights. And it turned out to be like a huge brand building moment for Coinbase. So that was an interesting experience.
The crazy thing is you're building a business. It's already freaking hard. Then there's these volatile markets, these crazy bear markets. It's very hard. And then on the top of that, you need to do all this shit. How do you, there's this meme with never kill yourself, right? You've been doing this for 13 years, multiple bear market, multiple bull markets, crypto prices going down 90% plus, lots of people fired. The US political system against you, the banks against you, your co-founder leaving, an IPO, and another drawdown in the stock price of more or less 90%.
Mm-hmm.
And then all these problems to solve on the top just to make it's not even your core business, right? How do you last so long as a founder without killing yourself?
Well, I don't ever give up. Elon said that once in an interview. It was a great line. I think it's actually really important in entrepreneurship to just have unreasonable amounts of determination, right? And I don't think I'm always like the smartest guy in the room. Like I don't think I'm like have the best brilliant ideas. I'm not like the best fundraiser ever, but I do have pretty extraordinary levels of determination. And I kind of don't care how many times something doesn't work. I'm going to get to that goal if I want to do it. And I'm very flexible on how to get there. I'm stubborn on the goal and I'm very flexible on how to get there. So if I come up against a brick wall, I'm going to find a way to jump over it. I'm going to dig a tunnel under it. I'm going to drill through it. I'm going to like build an airplane or whatever to fly around it. So like there's always a creative way if you're persistent and determined enough. And I actually think that's why determination is probably if you had to pick one quality in entrepreneurship, that is the most important one. There's lots of other ones that help, but being unreasonably determined is a very important part of that. And some mornings I wake up and I have to get myself into that mindset. It doesn't come naturally, right? There's some mornings I've woken up and I've like, everything sucks. It's not working. Why am I even doing this? I just want to go back to sleep,
What do you do when you feel like that? Or what did you do when you felt like that?
Yeah. Well, okay. So this might sound funny, but one thing I would do is type into my phone David Goggins into YouTube. And he's just one of many people, but he has some great videos about, he's just like, you have a bad attitude, like, stop being a little BITCH or whatever, and just go. And if you need motivation in the morning, like it's a great way to go. The other thing I would say I did was that, I mean, anybody will get burned out if you're just working all the time, right? So, I mean, there's some, I don't know, super inhuman people out there, but for me, there were times where I was just overdoing it. I was like working too much without a break, and anybody will get burned out and depressed. So the solution is like, sounds simple, but it's hard to do in practice, which is go exercise, go get outdoors in nature, go hang out with like friends and family, and go laugh and have some wine at dinner with your friends or whatever. And you know what? In 48 hours, you're probably gonna feel better, and you can come back to work. Like, it's not the end of the world. But I saw a lot of entrepreneurs actually that started companies around the same time I did, and many of them burned out. Like, they didn't have the longevity. Some of them had very unhealthy things that happened too. Like, they gained a bunch of weight, they lost a bunch of weight. There's times where the stress will actually manifest in you'll get like crazy back pain, or like all kinds of things will show up. And so you have to make it sustainable. It can't just, for maybe like a year or two, you can like just all out sprint and burn the candle at both ends. But if you have to turn it into like a sustainable pace at a certain point, and realize that this is not some temporary like situation I'm in. This is my life now. Like, I want to be doing this for my whole life and building things. And so you have to invest time with friends and family, get enough exercise, get enough sleep, find time to, meditate, read a little bit in the evening, do sauna, like whatever it is you want to do, have a minute to like disconnect from all of it, like get all the anger and stuff out of your ruminations out of your head so you can have a good night's sleep. These are easy to say and hard to do. So I have gotten a lot more rigorous over time about the basics, right? Which would be like sleep, exercise, and nutrition. I think that helps, but there's still mornings where I wake up and I have a bad attitude, and I gotta, listen to some David Goggins.
Told me a little bit. What's one really bad moment? It was probably earlier in your founder journey, where, because there's this kind of founder denial, right? You're just doing this thing, and you might start to have like some depression or anxiety or back pain or whatever. You think it's okay, tomorrow is gonna go away, right? I just continue. What's one moment where like you kind of, I don't want to say almost broke down, but realized, holy shit, it's not gonna go away if I don't do something about it?
Well, there's two stories that are coming to mind. I mean, one is that actually, I remember at one point I was having like a lot of back pain, and I thought initially maybe I was like, I needed a new mattress or something. Like, I was having some like ergonomic issue, and I actually bought like a new mattress, and I was trying all these things. Like, nothing I could do that made it go away. And then at that time, I think I had like 12 or 15 direct reports, because like one of the leaders had left, and I was managing the team, and I shifted from having like 12 or 15 reports to going down to like 4 or 5, and suddenly all my back pain went away. And I realized, oh, okay, it's psychological. And the stress that was causing me was like showing up in these weird ways. And so that stress and that pain, or that whatever's manifesting, it's there to tell you something that needs to change. So it has a lot of wisdom. I guess you don't want to just like take a bunch of painkillers and ignore it. It's there trying to tell you something valuable. So for me, it was like, I mean, to be honest, I'd say like every couple of years at Coinbase, I remember feeling like burned out. Like, building companies is hard, right? And every couple of years, I'd start to feel kind of burned out, and I'd realize, okay, something has to change. Usually it's like you need to delegate something major and stop doing it. You need to totally change the way you're doing something. There were certain things that I held on to early on that I was like, well, the CEO has to do this, right? And
For example?
like an example was running the leadership meeting every Monday. I felt like, okay, well, I have to put the agenda together and, lead this meeting and be in charge and tell people, and at some point I realized, actually, my chief of staff can do that and be the facilitator of that meeting. What I want to do is really like, or the president or the COO or someone else can do that. I really want to participate in that meeting. I want to be sitting there very thoughtfully, hearing all the information about this tough decision we have to make, and it's fine. I'll render a decision, at the end of the meeting or at the end of the day, think on it a little bit, but I don't need to be like the one, quote unquote, facilitating or running that meeting. That was not my place. That's not the place I felt like I was adding the most value. And that was just an example. Now I feel actually more comfortable running those meetings when I want to, but at that time it was like it was stressing me out. So it's just an example.
I talked to Jesse Pollack, as I said before, the creator of Base, on this podcast a year ago.
Yeah.
And he told me about the first year of Base.
Yeah.
And how he was so burned out that he had to go to sleep after 30 minutes meetings. You have to go to sleep like for 4 hours during the day. And then this happened multiple times.
Yeah.
And that he was not sure if mentally or physically he could basically make it. He was saying like, Brian is waiting. I think it was every week or every 2 weeks. We're basically waiting for like some news that was going on. And he was like, shit, I don't have anything to tell him. And so, I mean, he actually said that his partner was very helpful in that moment to like help him keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Many people are entrepreneurs who read your story online or watch this podcast, probably dream of being you. What do they not know or understand about what it truly means to be you?
Well, I think I'm pretty transparent, and I hope people can get a sense of who I am. It's not any big secret, but like, I guess the big thing that I would push my younger self or maybe other people to consider is that many people are doing something, but it's not their ultimate idea or vision. They are afraid to jump into the unknown and try something that crazy or that ambitious. Like a lot of entrepreneurs come to me and they tell me in a quiet moment, they'll say, well, yeah, like someday I think it'd be really cool to do X and Y, but right now I'm working on X. And sometimes I wonder, why aren't you just doing the big thing, the ambitious thing? And they have a good reason. They're like, well, I need to make a little bit of money first, or I need to build my reputation first, but what a lot of people don't realize is they should actually just go for more ambitious ideas. And this is something I've had to learn for myself too over time, was that it's about like limiting beliefs and confidence, right? Like early on, I had tried starting like a couple of companies, like this tutoring company. I remember I just wanted to get to like a couple $100,000 of revenue to be able to pay myself and own a small business. Like that was my goal. And I remember I was reading like a book or something one day and I was like, what do I really want? And I was like, well, what if I could start like $1 billion tech company? Like that would be crazy. And I had no business dreaming something that big. I had never even started a company worth $1 million, much less $1 billion, but I would kind of write that goal down like almost every day for a number of years and think about like, what would that be like? What would I have to do? And it caused me to take certain actions, right? Like I moved to San Francisco Bay Area and I started applying to Y Combinator to tinker with these prototypes. And like something like 7 years after I wrote that goal, Coinbase had over $1 billion valuation, right? And then I started thinking, okay, what's the next goal? Like I got to think bigger, maybe someday we can have like 1 billion people using our apps to access this open financial system, right? So I started to think, I actually think it's important for people to try more ambitious ideas. Like it's actually a little bit easier to go after ambitious ideas because it attracts other really smart people to you who want to work on something important that matters, right? And it has to be something where if it works, it really matters in the world. It has a positive downstream impact. Like it's something you can be proud of for your whole life. Like, I think people are often thinking too short term as well. They're like, I don't know, I'll do this for like 2 years or 3 years and I can get the product to the market and maybe I'll make some money. But no, I mean, tackle things that are more ambitious that you would be willing to work on for a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades if it really started to show progress, right? Because anything really ambitious worth doing is probably going to take at least a decade. And I think, anyway, that's a lesson I've taken away. And as I've gotten older, I've tried to think about big goals like that. And you have a limited amount of time here. Many people don't actually do the thing that they really wanted until like their deathbed, like Steve Jobs kind of famously like worked on the iPhone. He knew he was dying, right? Or Hal Finney, right? If you believe he was involved in Bitcoin, which he may or may not have been, he was on his deathbed when he finally did his best work. And so you kind of have to almost create this mindset of like, if I only had 6 months left to live. Like, what would I do? Why don't you do it now? And that's a hard thing to do. Most people never even consider it.
I was talking with Avishal from Electric Capital the other day, and he said the problem today is exactly that, right? He said there's enough technology, there's enough talent, people are smart enough, but they don't realize it. The biggest thing that is missing is people with self-belief who go after these big things. People are scared.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, I actually think you can change your own beliefs, right? It's actually healthy to have semi-irrational beliefs in some ways, right? Like there's like that great quote about like whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right. If it might be like totally silly or irrational to believe that you can do something, like maybe you can make fusion energy work. Maybe you can make brain machine interfaces work. Maybe you can cure aging, maybe you can create a new country like in the world that has more economic freedom, right? Maybe you can start whatever it is you want to do. Self-talk is important, right? Like if you're telling yourself every day, like, oh, you're not smart enough, you're too slow, like you're not good at, you don't have enough energy, you're too old, like whatever your limiting belief is, you're going to eventually believe it. So I often will try to do that. I mean, I try to be very conscious about my own self-talk. I talk to myself sometimes, or I write stuff down in my journal or whatever. I'm like, yeah, you can do this. Like you have lots of energy, you have lots of time, you have lots of resources. Like you can actually decide to be a happier person. Like I think Abe Lincoln or someone said that. It was like, people are roughly as happy as they decide to be. And so you can choose what you want to focus on. Do you want to choose to focus on the things that, like resources that you have, appreciations that you have, or do you want to choose to focus on the negative? And left to our own devices, our brains will default to the negative or 50-50. And so you have to kind of consciously choose and make like a habit out of focusing on the more positive parts.
What's something that you still believe you can't do or you're afraid of?
Well, I think given enough time, which, we all have finite time on the planet. It's probably why I co-founded and invested in a longevity company. But I think given enough time, I think I maybe could help do anything. Like, I don't know. But I'll tell you something I am afraid of is, I still am afraid of hurting people. Like I'm conflict avoidant. This is like something I've been trying to get over from my childhood, or I don't know where it comes from. But like whenever I have to deliver bad news to somebody, or it creates a lot of anxiety in me. Like I ruminate on it. It causes like, I can feel it. And that's, there's a positive aspect of it too. You don't just want to be like unintentionally hurting people or something like that, right? But I also think that if it's the right thing to do, I don't want it to just destroy my week or something, right? It's, usually it doesn't do anything that bad, but like I will feel the fear about it and I'll do it anyway. So it hasn't held me back tremendously, but I wish I just didn't feel that fear. That would be something I'm working on.
You think you can do almost anything? There's also things that you were wrong about, but that ended up or turned out to be, you were wrong, but turned out to be amazing successes for Coinbase. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, well, I think there are lots of examples like that where the first time we tried something, it didn't work. And so I was wrong. And then I'm okay with that. It just means you try it again and you see if that works. And if that doesn't work, you try it again and you do that 100 times. And eventually you get something to go through. So there's lots of small examples like that. Like the first time we tried expanding into Japan, it didn't work. We had to shut it down. Or the first time we tried having an OKR system, objectives and key results in the company, it didn't work very well. We had to try like 3 or 4 iterations. A lot of small examples. I'll give you maybe a bigger one. I initially thought as an entrepreneur that you just follow the rules and then you don't really have to engage with the government, right? This kind of going back to the policy conversation we had earlier. And I actually really didn't like the idea of going to spend a lot of time with politicians or in DC. And I was like, oh man, I'll do it if I need to, but like, I really want to work on the product and the engineering. And like, can't we just follow the rules and then we don't have to engage with the government? And I realized at a certain point that was quite naive. for the reasons we talked about, because even if you're not interested in the government's interested in you. And there might even be people who try to weaponize the lack of clarity in the rules to attack you. And so I had to learn to love policy work, for lack of a better word. And I think we're in a much healthier place on that. We've built up a lot of skill set, and it's actually allowed me to turn my time and attention back to like innovating in product. And we need to make sure we're building on chain and bringing all these assets. We're doing the everything exchange now, all this cool stuff. So, but that was an example where I was pretty hesitant, reluctant to really embrace that idea for a while. And I think it hurt us.
You said before that you worked at Airbnb.
Yeah.
I want to quote the other Brian, who you know very well, from Airbnb.
Mm-hmm.
As I became a CEO, I started leading from the front at the top of the mountain. But then the higher you get to the peak, the fewer people there are with you. No one ever told me how lonely you would get, and I wasn't prepared for that. On the day of our IPO, we reached $100 billion validation. I remember after going public, I was like, oh my God. There's this like amazing exaltation. It was amazing. I'd gone to the mountain, and then I woke up the next day, and my life was exactly the same. I'm alone. I wake up, I put on my sweatpants, I go onto my iMac, and I have like 10 to 12 hours of Zoom meetings, and I just don't really have much of my life outside of work. My work was my life. These are the words from Brian Chesky, the co-founder and CEO of Airbnb. Coinbase has a pretty similar story to Airbnb, with an IPO near $100 billion. How did you feel during the IPO day and the day after the IPO day?
Yeah, well, there's actually a great documentary called Coin, which filmed that day. And so people can go watch it if they want to. And it shows me on that day. It was during COVID, which I think maybe Airbnb was during COVID too, which is why he's talking about the Zoom and the sweatpants and all that. But yeah, we were not ringing the bell at the NASDAQ. I was just in my own home, virtually engaging with media and things. And yeah, it was kind of like a surreal moment where, I look back on it now as kind of like a milestone in my life, and it was a much bigger deal actually looking backward than at the time. It just felt like another fundraise, and I actually didn't feel very much that day. You're tired, you're busy, you're doing a million things. I didn't really stop to think about it that much, but what really started to make it resonate for me more emotionally was like the hundreds or maybe I think over 1,000 people like became millionaires on that day, like employees and investors. And I got so many messages from people telling me about how it had changed their life, like that I had created this and they'd allowed their family to buy a home, and they were first generation this and that. And so it actually had a major like emotional impact over me looking back on it over time. And it's something I'll never forget. But yeah, at the time it was almost surreal. Like I didn't feel that much. And I think if I were to zoom out on what Brian Chesky is talking about there, I mean, he's right. It can be lonely as the company grows. And, early on at Coinbase, we were like a small team, and I think I was just like one of the people, and we were all like friends. And there was something that happened maybe when we were like a couple hundred people or beyond, where I remember I showed up to a happy hour one time, and everyone kind of got quiet, and they're like, oh, and it was like, oh my God, like the CEO's here. And I was that was the first time I realized, oh, like it's weird. It's like it's weird when I'm kind of like the buzzkill when I show up to the party. So one thing that I did that might be helpful to other people, because I was working a lot and just growing the company, and you can have some kind of a really good relationship with a lot of employees and people that work with you. They're actually great relationships, but they are fundamentally different because if you're their boss, right? So one thing I did was I decided I need to have like a stronger friend group of other founders. And I reached out to maybe like 10 founders these are just people who, when I interacted with them, I was like, oh, it's interesting. I learned something. It raises my energy to be around them. And maybe like 7 of them showed up or something out of the 10. And I just decided, I was like, hey, we should just like meet once a month and go to dinner. Maybe once a year, we should like do a trip or something. And it became this friend group that actually has added a lot of value to my life, I think, hopefully to theirs. And we talk about work, we talk about personal stuff. And so it's been like a great friend group, I think that's useful for people to do. Some people might call this like a mastermind group or something. I don't know, but you can learn from each other about building companies, but a lot of it's like more personal stuff than just friendships. So I was always somebody who, I don't know, I didn't like naturally keep in touch with people or build friends because, I'm always just so busy with stuff. Unless I scheduled it, like, okay, every month we're going to hang out, and once a year we're going to go on a trip. Unless I scheduled it, it just didn't happen organically. And so that was a way for me to make sure. And then of course, like, build your own family. So friendships, family, and then work. And I think that's a good community.
You mentioned before the IPO day where you were basically locked in and not really thinking about what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Are you able, or do you even care today about taking some time to look back and say, oh, wow, we did this, we achieved this, or is something you don't do?
I don't like to look backwards as much. Most of the time I'm thinking about the future. And then the present, I need to get something done. Then I go back to the future because I'm excited about the future. Once in a while, I think back on the past and I allow myself to feel appreciation for those moments because they're amazing. But I don't like to dwell on the past too much because I feel like it might hurt my motivation a little bit, right? It's like there are people when they get older in life who I think they mostly just want to go around and collect awards and be mentors and go on boards and, teach the next generation. Like that can all be very fulfilling as well. And I don't fault anybody who wants to do that. For me, I still like, I feel like I have a lot left to do. So I want to keep building. And so I'm trying to stay hungry, stay foolish, as Steve Jobs might say, and like keep trying things that are a little crazy, a little more ambitious, outside my comfort zone. So that's been fun for me to help get some other companies off the ground as well in ambitious areas and try to stay sharp on the frontier.
Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Yeah.
When is job done for Brian?
Never. I mean, I hope I get to do this building companies for a long time, my whole life. It's not like some end goal I have in mind, right? If I was just trying to make enough money to retire, that I could have done that a long time ago. So I think that this is something that people don't really actually understand sometimes about entrepreneurs is they're not doing it for like just personal enrichment, right? It is nice to accumulate capital. It allows you to like allocate money to other things you care about. Like maybe you could help this cause or start this company or, capital is useful to go allocate it and get things done in the world. But it's at a certain point, it's less about personal consumption. You can still have a nice house or whatever, but it's not mostly about personal consumption anymore. So I think I will feel happiest if I'm trying to build something even till the day I die, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Regarding personal consumption, I was with Paolo from Tether a couple of weeks ago in the studio and had a bunch of my team in there, and he came with his own shoes and his Tether t-shirt and the Garmin watch. And some of the team were like, and basically sleeps 5 hours a night, wakes up every hour to check notification because of Bitfinex. And that's his life.
Okay.
And they were saying what you said before. People don't really understand, right? They were saying, I can't believe this guy is just with his Tether t-shirt and with his Garmin watch and with his own shoes there. And he's working so much when he has all this money. They don't get it. That's it. They don't get it.
Totally.
You mentioned before that relationships is an important part. I read before.
I don't own a car or a watch or any of that stuff either, but I think it is useful to have like like a nice house and maybe it's just to get work done. It's useful to have like plane travel that can be very efficient and maybe a driver, things like that. But for like personal consumption, I'm not too big on it. Yeah.
So you don't own a car, no car, no watch, a house.
Yeah,
you do.
Yeah,
to live in. Yeah. I mean, I've heard that a lot actually. It makes so much sense. Why would you? It's a Telegram founder, Pavel, who just says, I have a few $100 million in cash and in Bitcoin, and I don't know anything because I want to focus on what I'm doing, and I don't want to have my brain thinking about other things or other investments?
Yeah. I guess I do like the minimalist lifestyle of that. Like it's funny. I remember I was talking with somebody at one point and they were like, well, you need an insurance policy for like the things in your home, and let's like list all the valuable things. And I was like, the most expensive thing I could think of was my laptop, which was like, I just keep my laptop in my backpack, and they're like, really? Like that's, and I was like, yeah, I have some clothes, like some like black t-shirts, and my backpack with a laptop, but I don't know, like there's a TV on the wall, I guess, like someone could take that. I don't know.
Do you have the same t-shirt 10 times, 20 times?
Yeah, I pretty much wear the same thing every day, at least while I'm working. It's just simpler. And it makes it easy to pack. And, once in a while on the weekend, I'll put on a suit when I go to DC or something. I'm not like religious about it. I don't mind wearing other things if it's fun, but like just for practicality, I like doing the daily uniform. Yeah.
I read this really cool tweet the other day about being a male founder and how it's hard to find a girlfriend. The hardest part about being a male founder, in my experience, is finding a girlfriend or partner that understands the short-term gains that we're foregoing and the long-term optimization game that we're playing. Most women expect to have most dates paid for, their vacation covered, and their partner to have the time and, the most important thing, emotional bandwidth to support them. Somebody they see as a reliable provider. It's completely understandable. But as founders, every dollar saved is additional runway for the company. We budget down to the cent because our life's work depends on it. Every 100-hour work week slightly increases the odds of success. At this stage of life, we're both cash poor and time poor and brain bandwidth poor, which for the relationship is probably the most important thing. Betting everything on the hope that one day it all works out, that one day we'll be sitting on generational wealth, the kind most men only dream about. I read these two quotes from Alex Karp, the co-founder and CEO of Palantir. The first one is about emotional bandwidth and social life. He's saying, I never met someone successful who had a great social life in their 20s. The second one is about having a girlfriend. I never had a girlfriend. Before Palantir, I was too poor. Now I'm too rich. You got married in 2024 in your early 40s. What's the answer or one answer to being a founder trying to change the world and still managing to find the right partner and build a relationship, which is almost a full-time job too?
Yeah, well, big question. I certainly don't claim to have all the answers here, but I can just tell you what's worked for me. I mean, I think it's important to work hard and have like a mission that you're on and do something that makes you fulfilled in your work, but also make time for your personal life, right? And whether it's a man or woman or anybody, it's just, you want to have a partner that supports you in that, but can also push you to be better where you need to, or maybe compliment you on things that you're not as good at. And that's what we're all looking for. So I think like anything, you have to invest in it invest time in it if you want it to grow. And so that's true of work. It's true of your family. I hope, and I want to be somebody who can have a great business life and personal life. And that's my goal. And we won't, check in with me in 50 years. We'll see how I did.
Is there a moment in your life, because I've been talking to a bunch of founders, obviously, and there's this common thing, which is the emotional bandwidth, right?
Yeah.
I just don't have the bandwidth. Like I'm just focused on this business and there's a trillion problems at the same time. And there's employees to pay and then there's clients not paying on time and all this stuff, right? Cash flow problems. And so it's kind of easy to just think, I'm just going to postpone this relationship thing because my life is so hard already. And I cannot really be mentally present for someone else. Is there a moment in your life where you actually forced yourself to say, now I really need to be more serious on this other thing? Because life flies, right? Time flies, especially when you work so hard, and you could just end up being 50, 60 and single and multi-billionaire, but alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'd say in the early days of Coinbase, especially, I was just working 14-hour days, sometimes 7 days a week, not always, but it would have been harder, I think, for me to have like a more serious relationship at that time. So it did take Coinbase to get to a certain level of maturity where I felt like I could have some bandwidth to start to think about these other things. And yeah, just like anybody, I think it was partly a function of age, partly a function of my own maturity. Like all kinds of things had to come together. And I do know some people that are billionaires and they are kind of lonely and they're older. And so, but it's a choice, right? They can choose at any age to find a partner and invest time in it. People have all kinds of things going on where they don't want to do that, or it's not my place to judge. But yeah, for me, I think I feel more steady in a long-term committed relationship, and it's like incredibly additive to my life, and so it helps me focus on work even more.
You tweeted, "Every entrepreneur I know thinks the fundraising process is broken. Why capital formation should be on chain. It's more efficient. The process is fairer for both sides. Much more transparency." Can you explain?
Yeah, well, lots of things are coming on chain, right? Every asset class, and that's partly what Coinbase is up to now. We're trying to make it easier for people to trade not just every crypto asset, but stocks and prediction markets and commodities and energy and so it's just a natural evolution of this where capital formation or fundraising is going to come more and more on chain. We saw early versions of this with like the ICO craze, right? Now we're getting a little more regulatory clarity, and like everything that Coinbase does, we try to make crypto trusted and easy to use. We can probably build a simple product in this space that helps anybody come in and do that, right? And we have about $500 billion of crypto stored on the platform now from investors, retail and institutional. They want to invest in these things, so we have a great network effect we can put in front of them, these opportunities. So we recently acquired a company called Echo, which is doing great in terms of on-chain capital formation or fundraising. We also acquired a company called Liquify that does on-chain capital management, or cap table management, I should say. And so we're thinking about how to best integrate these over time. And in my perfect world, there's a button in the app for any company and entrepreneur who wants to come in and say, help me form a company, maybe on-chain, and then set me up with a Coinbase business account. And then I want to press the button to raise money, and we can help them put out their pitch and their material and maybe deal with any of the compliance or regulatory pieces, the securities piece, if that's part of it, and then market it to investors, and boom, the money's in their account. They get back to work. In the traditional way that this happens in startups, it's super inefficient. Like every tech entrepreneur I know when they go through a fundraise, it takes like 3 months out of the year. You have to be totally focused on it. You do dozens or like 100 meetings, lots of no's. When it finally happens, you're chasing people for wires. Like there's millions of dollars in legal fees. It's just like, it's all consuming and very inefficient. And so this could be done much more efficiently on chain with lower fees, faster, more global participants. That's what we're going to try to help people do.
There's a big event early this year, the Trump launch. And I mean, on the top of onboarding, I think around 1 million people into crypto. It showed the power of on-chain, everything on-chain. And then you have an app where you can buy with Apple Pay, the coin. And then all these exchanges that are centralized offer Trump, but later on, and people already kind of miss a lot of the opportunity.
Yeah.
For me, it was actually the moment I really, like my aha moment with on-chain. I was like, holy shit, now I understand. And I went, I would say like almost, further, and I just thought, is Coinbase or is Binance or is Bybit cooked? What's the role of centralized crypto exchanges like Coinbase, Binance, Bybit in a world where everything is moving on-chain?
Yeah, so we believed for a long time that it's moving more on-chain, trading, payments, all wallets. So we've been investing in this heavily. I think not only is Coinbase not going to be disrupted by it, we're going to be a leader in this. So an example is in the main Coinbase app, we've now integrated decentralized exchanges, right? So we went from having maybe a couple hundred assets trading on the centralized exchange to, I think it's now over 40,000 assets available through decentralized exchanges. It'll be millions soon. And it's, from a customer point of view, it's seamless. Like they can trade the asset, and whether it's on a centralized exchange or a decentralized exchange. Sometimes they don't even need to know. They can see it if they want to, but from their point of view, it needs to quote unquote just work. So now when assets become available, they don't have to go through some longer listing process on Coinbase. They're available in the app. So that's an example. We also have a self-custodial wallet that is totally on chain, right? That's what used to be called Coinbase Wallet. It's now the new Base app. And that's still in beta, but we have about over 1 million people on the wait list, and it'll be coming to general availability soon. But if you want to do it like an app that's entirely self-custodial, 100% on chain, that's what we're building with that. So we're all in the move to on chain.
What's the end game for Coinbase?
The end game is that we have 1 billion or more people accessing the open financial system through our app every day. They have access to sound money, instant global payments for less than a cent. They can trade any asset they want. It becomes like a bank replacement for them over time. All their financial services and their brokerage replacement, everything, all financial services can happen through one app. And we increase economic freedom in the world because anybody with a smartphone can get access to it.
Are you happy?
I think I'm reasonably happy. I mean, I'm actually I'd say I'm pretty fulfilled, which is, to me, is a different word. I feel like I'm on my path in the sense that I'm doing work that I think I'm good at. I feel like I'm contributing some value in the world. I'm always trying to contribute more. That's always a good thing to check on. How can I be doing more, creating more value, doing something useful? Sometimes I feel stressed and burned out. But that also means you're growing, right? Like if I didn't feel stressed at all, I think I would feel really bad about that, right? So you want to be like 20% outside your comfort zone every week or day, not like 300% outside your comfort zone where you might be too stressed out or anxious all the time. So I'd say I feel pretty fulfilled, and I feel like I have my health. I have a good community around me, family, friends, and I have work that's meaningful to me, and I have access to resources to get things done, like an incredible abundance of that. And so I can get access to almost anybody who I want in the world to try to build things. I have capital to allocate to things. So I feel very fulfilled.
What's the impact of being worth billions of dollars on fulfillment? Honestly.
Yeah, honestly. I think having access to wealth or being a billionaire, it allows you to get more things done. So it doesn't really change your happiness much. I think, there's those studies about, I think if you're earning less than 100,000, if you're not sure where your next meal is going to come from, or like you can't afford medicine or something, like these can be actually very, I think, lowering of people's happiness scores. But I would say I'm roughly about as happy as I was when, I was a early employee at Airbnb or whatever. I had a couple $1,000s in my bank account or something. I'm about the same level of happiness, and that was a good life then. By the way, I just living in the United States makes you I had a great tech job and whatever. I was already a winner, right? So in the global sense, so I felt about the same happiness then as I do now. But I'd say I feel much more fulfilled now because I feel like I am contributing more. I feel more comfortable in my own skin. I feel I have more experience. I have more ability to get things done just by calling people and working together with people, reputation. And I have more resources to get things done too. I think some people, they're a little bit like turned off by this idea of like, oh, I'm not doing this for the money or something, right? But then I kind of ask them, well, what are your goals? What do you want? And they'll usually tell me like, well, I would really love to build a park in my neighborhood, or I would really love to make clinical trials more efficient in biotech, or whatever they tell you, right? I really love the arts or something, and I'm like, well, capital would help you do that. Like if you had access to more capital, you could create a park in your neighborhood very easily, or endow some school, or like create an advocacy or organization for whatever you want. So I actually think if that's the great thing about like capitalism and why I'm excited about free markets is that if you do something of value to other people, they will give you money in a free exchanging society only if they want the thing you created has more value than the money, right? Like, and then if that will accumulate capital, that means you can then allocate more capital. And then if you don't do useful things, you will lose capital. And so it's this beautiful kind of self-correcting system, which it gives more capital to people that are making good decisions, and it takes capital away from people who are making bad decisions. And, there are exceptions to this, right? Sometimes someone might sell an addictive product, right? Or like there's tragedy of the commons. Like there are exceptions to this. I don't want to claim that capitalism is perfect, but it's like the least bad system than any other of the other ones we've found, because incentives are aligned to try to help your fellow people, like not out of just pure love, but also self-interest. And you can rely on everyone to at least care about that to some degree. So yeah, that's my answer.
So money is more like a KPI or benchmark on whether I'm doing things right in terms of value creation for the world than anything else.
Yeah, it's a way to kind of keep score in the game, and it gives you resources to go get other things done.
What's one thing that you're holding on to, but you know that you should let go of?
Well, I'd come back to what I said earlier about being afraid of hurting people, or like maybe the fear of upsetting people and being disliked. And I still will get there eventually, but sometimes it takes me longer and it really causes me a lot of anxiety. So I would love it if I could let go of that somehow.
Have you done something to get better at that? Because it's probably affecting, I would say, probably firing.
Yeah.
Makes it terrible. Probably breaking up if you're in a relationship that are not good for you.
Yeah. Those are good examples. Yeah. I mean, I would say the current way that I've tried to do it is just, if you do enough reps of anything, you get better at it, right? Like if you're afraid of public speaking or doing an interview like this, like, if you do it 100 times or 1,000 times, you're going to be less nervous about it. So there is a exposure therapy version of this where you just keep doing it. And I think as I've gotten older and done more difficult things like that, it is making me a little more resilient to it. So I think that's good. There's probably some deep therapy work or something that might help, but I don't know. I've read books on it and things like that. I think I'm getting there over time.
Have you ever considered or done therapy?
Well, yeah. I mean, actually, early on at Coinbase, especially, like I had never managed anybody, and I remember talking to our board and saying, maybe I should get an executive coach or something. And what they explained to me at that time, Fred Wilson on our board, it was like, well, there's lots of different types of executive coaches. Some of them are people who've started a business before and they can coach you on a lot of tactical stuff. Other ones are basically therapists, and they'll kind of put you on the couch and talk about your feelings and your fears and anxieties and whatnot. So yeah, as Coinbase was growing, I had a handful of exec coaches that I worked with, and there's not one that I'm working with now, but I do feel like I have a group of other founders and mentors and the board itself who I can call for advice, and they are incredibly helpful on those dimensions.
What does the voice in your head tell you every morning when you wake up, or every night when you go to sleep?
Well, usually by default, I just have a lot of things going on in my brain, and I'm processing the day. I'm pissed off at what somebody said or what I forgot to. I'm mad at myself for not handling something or saying something better, or there's some competitive situation or some journalist or some regulator, and I'm just thinking about all these things that are ruminating, right? So I have to kind of, in the evenings, like I really try to wind down, allow my brain to be quieted, right? So I will just read a book for a while, or put my phone away and meditate a little bit, or go for sauna or something like that. And I'm not like consistent about any of these things, but I try to do some routine that like really quiets my mind, and then I can have peaceful sleep and really, really get rested, right? And just like anybody, if there's something I see right before going to bed that irritates me, or I'm working, I go right to bed, I sleep terribly, and I'm just having all these like stressful dreams the whole night, So I have to really try to calm myself for like an hour. And then, in the morning I wake up and sometimes I'm like, ooh, I have an idea. I could do this, right? Or other days I wake up and I'm again, pissed or ruminating about something, right? And I have to use that morning routine, which for me is like stretching, exercising, listening to podcasts and audiobooks, and like, that's the morning routine I go through usually most mornings that helps me get my mind right for the day.
Tell me one thing that you learned in the last 20 years that I can take with me for the next half of my life.
One of my favorite lessons is that action produces information. So Paul Graham, I think, said this, and I repeated it before, but if you're unsure what to do, just do anything. That even if it's the wrong thing, it will produce information about what you should be doing. And most people get stuck in this analysis paralysis of, well, what about this and that? And then just start. Like host a dinner with some friend, call someone to talk about it. Choose a name for this project. Write a paragraph and put it on X or send it to, there's something you can do just to start the ball rolling and moving. And what's the next step that you can do right now? And it'll take you to the next one and the next one. Like step into the unknown and just take the initiative, and that'll produce information which will tell you what you should be doing instead, and that'll be on to the next step.
What's something you believe in that most people would not agree with?
Well, okay, here's one. I recently invested in an embryo editing company. And the reason I did that is that embryo editing is controversial, but I
Can you
think,
explain what that is?
this is that a lot of people do like IVF today, and they have different embryos that they have available, and they do pre-implantation genetic testing, and they sort of choose the one that they want to implant and everything. I think that we're going to be in a future here in, I don't know how many years, 10 years or more, where you can actually start to make a small number of edits, maybe starting with a single base pair. And there's actually like 300 or 400 million people today living with genetic disease. A lot of these are rare genetic diseases. This is a controversial topic for many reasons, but one reason is that there's somebody who, Hu Jinkui, I think his name is, in China, kind of edited some babies and did it in maybe like not the most scientifically responsible way, one might say, to put it mildly. And it created, I'd say, like a setback for the industry. But I think if you fast forward, if this technology can be de-risked and shown in a laboratory research environment to be done safely, whether that's with mouse embryos or in a research environment to mitigate the risks, I think that it would be a powerful way to eliminate a lot of diseases, or at least mitigate risks. Like, ApoE4 is a single base pair edit that is, I believe, preventive for Alzheimer's, right? And so, or there's PCSK9 is like a single base pair edit that would be protective against heart disease, right? And so there's hundreds of millions or billions of people out in the world who have certain protective things, some that don't. And I think everybody wants to have healthy children. And it may actually end up in a world here in 10 or 20 years where it's viewed as, it'll flip from being like crazy and irresponsible to do it. It'll flip to being kind of crazy and irresponsible not to do it. Because if you could give your child like the best chance of a healthy life, why wouldn't you do it at a certain point? Now, there's a lot of steps between here and there that would have to happen for that technology to be de-risked, but and be done again in a safe and trusted way. So I think the research should start now, and then without someone starting it, it'll probably wouldn't get there.
So this is mostly for disease prevention.
Yeah.
How do you prevent this from becoming a crazy mother saying, I want my kid to look like this or to be like that?
Mm-hmm.
And then they basically edit, if it's possible, but probably one day will be. They edit their future kid to be exactly how they want it to be.
Yeah. Well, we don't have the ability to do that now. So, could it get there in the future? It's possible. And I think, in many ways, actually, parents are choosing how their children look by who they decide to have kids with, and they choose their partner, right? There's all kinds of things you're choosing in that regard, and we actually choose all kinds of things about our kids, how they turn out, like what school they go to or what nutrition they have. And so I think that this will be one other factor. Now, some people might make bad choices on that, just like in a way that they might choose to send their kid to a school that's not very good or feed them unhealthy food, right? But ultimately, we live in a free society. People, I think, should be free to make some bad choices. But ultimately, I don't know, in a society, they'll have to be, like, we as a society will have to understand what the rules and limitations are around that from a regulation point of view.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for working so hard day and night for more than 13 years to help our industry move forward, for doing all these things that you probably didn't want to do.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it. It's been fun.
The crypto industry would certainly not be where it is today, and I wouldn't either, without your super hard work, grit, and resilience.
Thank you.
As you probably know by now, I host some of the biggest names in Bitcoin and crypto on my podcast, but a lot of the best stuff never makes it on air. The Shift newsletter is where I share that raw behind-the-scene alpha, the insights, stories, and lessons straight from my guests that you won't hear anywhere else. If you want the real inside take on Bitcoin and crypto, join my newsletter, The Shift, in the description down below.